Does Jim Knowles to Ohio State show that the Big Ten is changing? All right, so if you've not heard, he was kind of the whole situation of everything that went down with Jim Knowles and how Jim Knowles got from Ohio State to Penn State. Um, Early on, when Jim Knowles was there, the rumor was that Jim Knowles didn't get along with Larry Johnson, who was a longtime defensive line coach. If you're a Penn State fan, you know who Larry Johnson is. I don't have to explain that. If you're not, Larry Johnson is a highly respected defensive line coach who has been doing it for a long time, and many regard him as one of the best, if not the best, to ever be a defensive line coach. So that's kind of the thought process there. And Larry Johnson, although he is a very good defensive line coach, he does have some beliefs that's not exactly evolved with the times of football. And Jim Knowles is a very innovative defensive coordinator. One of the reasons why he's one of the best, if not the best, in college football.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was hard for Jim Knowles to be able to do everything he wanted to do when he was also arguing with Larry Johnson about everything. Well, in addition to that, there was apparently tension between him and Ryan Day. I don't know exactly what it was. It doesn't exactly make sense because the rumor is that he had tension with him because after the Oregon game, Ryan Day forced him to change a bunch of stuff. But from everything I could tell, the defense looked more like what Jim Knowles ran at Oklahoma State after the Oregon game. So I don't know. It's really weird to me, but that's the story right now is that Jim Knowles didn't get along with Ryan Day because Ryan Day was essentially being really, really hard on the defensive staff after the Oregon game and was like, you guys got to change things and you guys got to fix things because we're not going to lose, having a national championship this year because of you. Essentially, is the thought there. And then that led to Jim Knowles wanting more control of the defense. He wanted more say. He wanted to be kind of the head coach, I guess. And that's what Ryan Day referred to Jim Knowles as when he first came in. But if you notice throughout the end of this season, he never really referred to Jim Knowles as the head coach of the defense anymore. So could there be some issues there? Who knows? And then the other piece of it is that Jim Knowles initiated the contact between Oklahoma and Penn State. I've heard that he did it before the national championship game. I heard he did it after the national championship game. Regardless of when it was, he initiated contact with those two. And then the other piece of it is that Ohio State basically thought Jim Knowles was using their offers as leverage to try and get more money from other teams. So Ohio
Mm-hmm.
State, basically they put the offer on the table and said, sign this or don't come back. And Jim Knowles decided not to come back. And so that's kind of the whole situation there. Obviously, Penn State, they paid him more than everybody else. I think it was 3.1 is what the official thing was there. So he
Mm-hmm.
paid him more, or they paid him more than everybody else. Zach, am I missing anything with how Jim Knowles left Ohio State to Penn State, or at least how it's rumored to have happened?
No, I think the thing I would just add and kind of to kind of paint the picture is everything we're hearing in a lot of ways, it's a lot of PR stuff, right? So they are trying, like Ohio State and Penn State and Jim Knowles all are trying to cover their bases in telling their version of the story. And so we know a lot of details and we know enough details to put together what different parties want you to think. And so, like Ohio State they put out like a contract offer that's going to be the most that any defensive coordinator takes. It didn't say it was a certain amount. And they said they are willing to match.
Yeah,
Whereas,
the rumor from Jim Knowles' fiance that apparently somebody messaged her on Facebook, which by the way, don't message players' families, coaches' families on Facebook. Please don't do it. It's just not a good idea. But apparently somebody messaged her and she said that Ohio State offered 2.75 and that
yeah.
Oklahoma and Notre Dame offered 3 million and Penn State offered 3.1 million. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and to be fair, 2.75 million would have made Jim Knowles the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country. So like Ohio State's not lying when they said that. We don't know if they really were intending to match and go even beyond what Penn State offered. They can say what they want. And the reality is Jim Knowles has a story that his fiance is putting out there, that maybe his agent's putting out there. Um, Penn State put in their press release that Jim Knowles is coming home. The Pennsylvania guy's coming home because Philly is so close to State College. It's not. It's not. I live in
Didn't
PA.
somebody say something like everybody from Philly wants to go to State College or like
Yeah,
to Happy Valley or something like that?
it's
I'm
dumb.
getting the quote wrong, but
Yeah.
I mean I get it. Like it's Pennsylvania's team. It's Penn State. I get it, obviously, but yeah, it's not like Happy Valley is just right down the road from Pennsylvania. What's it
It's a
like two,
it's
three
a
hours?
it's a 3.5 hour drive.
Yeah.
It's not. Bill Landis made this point on Kings of the North. It is easier to fly from Philly to Columbus than it is to drive from Philly to Happy Valley.
Yeah,
So
he's probably not wrong.
take that for what it's worth.
So essentially, all of this, we're not going to argue about what happened, what didn't happen. I've heard that on so many shows, and honestly, it's not compelling. I've heard multiple people try to do that, and it's like, okay, I really couldn't care less about what happened. And I'm an Ohio State fan, so like, I don't think Indiana fans or Nebraska fans care about that. What I do think is interesting is that Josh Pate came out on his show. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have time to clip this, but I will read it to you. Here's what Josh Pate had to say about this entire situation and how he believes this is making the Big Ten more like the SEC. We'll talk about if it really is, and then we'll talk about if that's good or not for the Big Ten. And then, like I said, we'll get to Michigan stuff after that, and then we'll get to transfer portal stuff after that. So stick with us. We're going to talk about this. Josh Pate said on his show when he was reviewing this whole situation, quote, "The Big Ten's really changed. The Big Ten used to be such a gentleman's club. Recruiting wise, it was like, you guys a verbal from him? You guys got a verbal from him? Well, we'll back off. We'll back off. Hey, can we have permission to talk to your defensive coordinator? Oh, okay. Fair enough, friend. We'll see you at the Big Ten Media Day. Oh, by the way, how are your kids?" And he said, like, it's cutthroat up there, which is what it's been like in the SEC for a long time, end quote. So he essentially what he's saying is that the schools are starting to get more cutthroat with one another and not really caring about like, oh, well, we're not going to steal a coordinator from you, or oh, we're not going to recruit a kid just because you're recruiting a kid, which honestly I've seen from the Big Ten more and more. Honestly, ever since COVID, like it's been changing a little bit up until then, but at least since COVID, I think Josh Pate is spot on here. Now, you all know I'm not the biggest Josh Pate fan in the world. I think he speaks very well, and I think that he's articulate and is entertaining. I don't like all of his takes, but I still listen to him from time to time because many other people do, and I think that he's a voice in the college football world you need to listen to. But anyway, essentially, what he's getting at here is that the Big Ten is becoming that conference that doesn't care about the rest of everybody else in the Big Ten, doesn't care if your coordinator's doing well, because guess what? We got to win, baby. And we're going to win however we can. So whether that is Rutgers taking Kirk Soraka from Minnesota, or Michigan State taking Joe Rossi, or Penn State taking Jim Knowles, or Michigan taking Tony Alford, whoever it is, like, and not for like upgrades. Like these are like same positions at other schools, but they're just paying them more. You didn't see this. You saw this some, but you didn't see this before in a lot of other places. Like you saw Michigan team or not Michigan, Big Ten teams take from other teams. Like, for instance, years and years and years ago, Michigan took Bo Schembechler from Woody Hayes. Well, he took him from being an assistant to being a head coach.
Yep.
That makes sense. But you weren't taking offensive coordinator being offensive coordinator. So, Zach, I'm curious, do you feel the same thing? Like, are you thinking the same thing? The Big Ten is changing. It's becoming more cutthroat. What are your thoughts?
I think it started. I think COVID it's ramped up, but I would argue it started when Urban Meyer took the Ohio State coaching job in 2012. Because I remember how ticked off I think it was Brett Bielema and Mark D'Antonio were that Urban Meyer poached recruits that were committed to Michigan State and Wisconsin. I think it was Savon Pittman and Kyle Dodson, who never actually played meaningful snaps. They were high four-star guys, and D'Antonio in particular was ticked. Because you remember, Jim Tressel and D'Antonio were buddy-buddy. D'Antonio was a defensive coordinator under Jim Tressel, won a national championship together. And so, it was a gentleman's club. And I think Urban started stirring things up. And then you get Harbaugh at Michigan. And then you get James Franklin in from the SEC, who I think is becoming more and more desperate to elevate. You get Brett Bielema, who went to the SEC for a time, and now he comes back to the conference. He's he's learned, oh, this is what it takes to win in a competitive conference. And I think the the thing I would say is you had a few really good coaches, but they were willing to be nice back in the aughts and the early teens or early tens. You have a lot of really good coaches now who know what it takes to win, and it takes it like it you want to be friendly, but at the same time, you know you might have to lose friends if you're gonna keep elevating. And I mean, I think even an example of this, Ryan Walters. I know, Purdue fans don't want to hear about Ryan Walters. I think it used to be customary that you got 3 years regardless. And Purdue was like, "We can't do this. This was so bad. We're not giving you a third year." And I think that, like, from top to bottom, these programs know you got to win, not just to be competitive for national championships, not just to be competitive nationally, but like if you don't produce, like you're going to get left behind in this NIL world. You just are. And I think NIL has propelled it as well. But I think where it started, the impetus was 2012 when Urban Meyer came. And I think it signaled to the rest of the Big Ten, the culture's changing. And it's been changing, and now I think it's here.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Couple questions and thoughts real fast from the chat, and then we'll move forward. Penn State guy says Knowles reached out to PSU in Oklahoma. Knowles initiated contact. Yes, I may have said he did send Notre Dame as well. I apologize if I did. It was just Penn State and Oklahoma that the rumor was he initiated contact to. Yeah, so and Penn State guys reiterating some of what we said. Day scolded Knowles after first Oregon loss. Must have been his D better. Knowles never got over it, and the main reason he left, which didn't make sense to me because Knowles got his defense the way he wanted it. It felt like after that, but I guess the scolding didn't really matter, or the defense change didn't really matter because he got scolded. Which
Yeah.
again, I don't want to get scolded at work, but I also work in a different environment than a football team. So,
Yeah.
but I can definitely see like you're not happy there, feel like you're mistreated, like you move on. I get it. Trojan Fight says is Knowles viewed as an improvement on who Penn State lost to Clemson. Yes. Would you
Yeah.
say so? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's viewed as the best coordinator in the country.
Yeah.
But I'd still say it's a big improvement for Tom Allen. No disrespect to Tom Allen. I think
Yeah.
Tom Allen's a good defensive coordinator, but still, Knowles is a massive improvement.
It's I would say it's like improving from an A- to an A+.
Yeah. Oh, Penn State guy said he just started listening, so mentioned it. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I got everything right. I misspoke in the last Knowles one, so I wanted to make sure. But thank you, Penn State guy. I appreciate your.
We
Go ahead.
I was gonna say we appreciate the comments, man. So
Yeah.
keep them coming.
For sure, for sure. All right, Brian Myers kind of getting to what you were talking about there. He said Urban brought the cutthroat recruiting from the SEC. Gentlemen's agreement on recruiting ain't a thing in SEC country. No, it's not. And it was outbid each other in SEC country as well, which people can say that Urban brought that to the Big Ten as well. But you know what? Everybody brought it everywhere now, so it's everywhere. But I do think it's interesting because like Ohio State was really the one that started all this. And like I said, it didn't really catch on and start happening more often and become more public until really after COVID. And it's because I think a lot of coaches had that time over the COVID area to say, like, we can make massive improvements. Like, there's a whole lot less hoopla and stuff going on. If we can bring in these better coordinators and not just hire guys from, the MAC and from the Sun Belt and stuff like that, we can make these massive improvements. And so that's why you're not only seeing teams like hire coordinators from each other, but you're also seeing Ohio State go after and get the head coach from UCLA to come over and be their offensive coordinator, right? Like, and I get it, like there was some other extenuating circumstances there, but like to me, that was like obviously Josh Pate has brought it to light here, but to me, that was one of the biggest moves. Even though there was the pre-existing relationship and everything there, like to go and get a head coach from another Big Ten school, and have him as your offensive coordinator, even if he was about to get fired, like that is a cutthroat move. And I think it
Mhm.
does change the Big Ten for the better overall. That the Big Ten is now saying, we don't care if Michigan State gets hurt, right? We don't care if Purdue, and
Mhm.
I think the transfer portal has a lot to do with this as well, because now you're forced to take guys from other Big Ten schools, right? Not
Yep.
only because there are other Big Ten schools and they're from the Midwest and stuff like that, but we've talked about on the show how many guys will transfer from schools a team played at that
Yep.
previous season or 2 seasons before. Because normally, what the coaches do, and it's no secret, is the coaches look and they say, hey, that guy was a really good edge rusher for Marshall, and who knows, something could happen. Maybe he wants to leave Marshall at the end of the year. I'm going to go over there and be a little bit more buddy buddy with him, so that way in the offseason, if he enters the transfer portal, I can say, hey buddy, remember me? You sacked our quarterback a few times. We'd love for you to do that over here instead, right? Well, happens in the Big Ten too.
Yeah. Well, and I think to that point, the biggest thing, I think the biggest win in all of this for Penn State is it weakens the one team that has caused the most trouble for them. Like they want to elevate above Ohio State and Michigan as well, but like Ohio State has been the thorn in their side throughout James Franklin's tenure. And so what do? You get their defensive coordinator who engineered one of the greatest defenses in Ohio State history. Like they were phenomenal. And so like I on the last episode I got roasted a little bit because I feel like I downplayed the Knowles hire a little bit. I'm not like I think and someone I think Penn State guy or Billy Tuesday mentioned it like part of my concern is it takes time to adjust to the system. But I think the biggest damage that's done is Ohio State has to go and hire another coordinator. And Ohio State sometimes has nailed their coordinator hires. And there have been times where they have flunked massively. 2018, 2020, like getting the Grinch and getting Kerry Combs. Neither worked. And so, like, if Ohio State flubs this coordinator hire, you have a broken defense, you have a shot to overtake them, as one of the preeminent forces in this conference. Which is again going back to the gentleman's agreement. Before it's like, well, we're gonna treat everyone nice. We're not gonna. It's like Penn State's like, screw that. We can cripple Ohio State. Let's try. And like I don't blame them for it.
Yeah, neither do I. I mean, I think that's a really good point. We brought it up last time. Like, was defense ever really the problem for Penn State? And I don't think that was to, de-emphasize the hire, but it was just being honest. Like, yes, Penn State's going to take a step up here, but you're taking a step up from, top 10, top five defense to, top three defense, which is still a huge improvement and very good. But, you know, there would have been people who said I would have rather had a superstar QB coach or something like that. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, what you're saying is correct as well, is that not only are you improving yourself, but you're one of your rivals. And whether Ohio State fans want to call Penn State a rival or not, I know Penn State fans generally feel like Ohio State is a rival. Like I said, generally feel. I'm not saying they're like a declared rival. I know they're not a declared rival on like the Big Ten rival stuff, but generally it's considered, if not the biggest, one of the biggest games of the season. So the overall thought there of like being able to cut down the team that has beat you so many times and a coach that you've never lost to, like that's really enticing as well. So, anything else on the Big Ten and the Big Ten, changing and leveling up? Like, I think this is one of the many reasons why, like, the Big Ten is getting up there. Like, a lot of people want to talk about talent acquisition and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, that is huge, but bringing in better coaches, better coordinators, all that stuff. Like coaches do make a difference. Talent is just about everything, but coaches do make a big difference as well, especially having guys with the right scheme and the right packages and everything like that. You agree or disagree, Zach?
Yeah, I think if I could even shift that thought a little bit more, like I think the posture of the league and the teams has shifted. And I think that really matters because they're not content anymore with just collecting a paycheck and being in the AAU. Like, they want to win. And, like, I mean, they would have said they want to win, but, like, they wanted to have a nice bowl season, 6-6, 7-5, enjoy the bowl game, and then, like, collect the research money. And that's not where they are anymore. And that's why the Big Ten is in such solid footing. And I don't think it was just the coaches. I think the athletic directors, I think the presidents, they realized if we want to survive, we need to evolve. And I think that was always the vision for Jim Delaney. It's like he was old school at heart, but he was always forward thinking. And so, everybody else is playing checkers with expansion, where I think he was playing 3D chess or 4D chess. Like, everybody panned Rutgers, Maryland, but it's like, no, you're getting DC, you're getting Baltimore, you're getting New York. Like, he knew what he was doing, and then that led to the expansion out west. And again, it solidified markets, which then made these teams so much more stable, which allows coaches to then say, okay, we see all the population shift. We don't care because now we got money to throw around.
Right. And like, how many of these teams, like, the athletic department is like, hey, we got more money. Like, go out and get somebody, right?
Mhm.
Like, go do it. There's more money there,
Yep.
and not just them, but obviously the fans as well. Again, fans having expectations for their program is not a bad thing. Does it sometimes result in some, kind of yikes stuff? Yes. Booing from the stands is a yikes thing. Just ask Indiana basketball fans right now. Like, it's a yikes thing. You don't want to do it. But how else do you get change, right? Like, how else do you get things to change to be for the better? And how else do you put pressure on your athletic department to do that? You don't buy tickets and you boo when you're there. Like, it sucks. But at the same time, I also don't feel that bad because all these players are getting paid now. I'd feel
Yeah.
bad if they were amateurs, but all these players are getting paid now, so I don't feel so bad.
Yep.
So, all right, last question, and then we'll move on. Who is the next coach that loses a coordinator and pulls a cutthroat move and goes and gets a big coordinator from somewhere else? I have one in mind, but I'll let you go first.
Well,
Unless you want me to go first because I hit you with that question unexpectedly.
I'm curious if you have the same one in mind because of the smoke out there. And I don't, I forget his.
Mine's not related to smoke. Mine's
Oh,
related
okay.
to I think it would be hilarious if he did it, and he would have so many people that are like, "Yeah, go do it."
Well, I don't know who you're talking about then. There's been smoke that Ohio State's trying to poach the co-defensive coordinator for Oregon.
Oh yeah, Phil Parker.
No, that's Iowa.
Oh, Oregon. Oregon. Chris Hampton. That's right.
Yeah, Chris Hampton. Yeah,
There's also smoke about Phil Parker, but I don't believe in that one as
that's
much.
not happening. Phil Parker's his ashes are gonna be scattered over Kinnick Stadium.
Him and Kirk Ferentz together.
Yeah, oh gosh.
But we don't want that to happen anytime soon. We like Kirk Ferentz and Phil Parker.
Yes,
Terry says JR thinks Sig. No, I think Sig will take a couple years. I think somebody who was in this conference before that's like, gloves are off, I'm back, I'm going to take your coordinator, Burt Bielema.
Burt.
Couldn't you see Burt like going to like, I don't know, one of the rivals or something like that and trying to get one of their coordinators, trying to go to, Wisconsin or Northwestern or something like that and trying to get one of their coordinators and do that. I don't know. I could see it happening. Billy Tuesday's with me. He says, Burt.
Yeah. I could totally.
I think Phillips with me at Phillips.
Listen, I think
is.
Brett, before he takes someone from the Big Ten, is going to poach someone from South Carolina just to prove it to Shane Beamer that he owns him.
Yeah. No, I agree. He could definitely do it. If he could get somebody from Shane Beamer, maybe do the which I know it wasn't a taunting thing, but it kind of looked like it and it was funny. So, all right.
Are we sure that it wasn't actually like? Yes,
I
know.
He said it wasn't.
He said it wasn't, but like again, Bielema 4D chess. Come on,
yeah.
Like